green portion shows the units that were rehabilitated, and then the blue shows the new production units. The orange-yellow line that cuts across shows our production targets, and these are targets that are established by council. So you can see that some years we exceed, some years we don't meet. Largely, that's a function of the market and the timing of when these developments occur. The bottom chart includes the numbers in the top chart. The scaling is just a little bit different, but the bottom chart also incorporates the number of units that are produced or rehabilitated between 50% and 80% of median income to capture more of the ownership activity, and also to reflect the fact that a lot of the rental units that are produced are between 50 and 60% of median income. So I'd be happy to take any further questions.
No, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I want to be very respectful of time. We've got a couple more slides to cover. I'm going to ask Director Reimer to come up and share those, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We have two capital asset requests that are recommended for funding. Both are technology related. The first is a recommendation of $200,000 in one-time funding to begin the replacement of MINS. That's an important business application in CPED that supports loans, projects, and property management. This necessary tool was custom built in the 1990s, and so it's antiquated. It is dependent on the Internet Explorer 8 platform, which will no longer be supported as of January 1st, 2016. So it needs to be replaced. The $2,000, so I've convinced you that maybe we should look at replacing it. The $2,000 gets us started. We've done a project definition with the IT department, and we'll continue to look at that. Right now, we have a ballpark preliminary full replacement figure of $2.25 million. But we'll be looking, this $200,000 gets us started at looking at some alternatives to that which may save us money. So we'll be looking at whether or not we can rest on some of the city's existing technology systems to perhaps take over some of these functionalities and save some money. We'll be coming back to the council with a final recommendation as to the ultimate solution, but the $200,000 is necessary to get the ball rolling on this. The other request is $187,000 for hardware related to the ELMS, the Enterprise Land Management System rollout. ELMS will be go live in 2016. Last year, the council and mayor funded $150,000 for hardware. This remaining $187,000 completes that. The primary technology needs are tablets for inspectors in the field and monitors for plan reviewers in the office. We also have a recommendation of CLIC funding of $580,000 for the Arts and Public Places program, and this is again a restoring of funding that was put on a hiatus last year to enable us to spend down fund balances. So this just keeps us on current service levels. With that, I'll take questions if there are any.
Not seeing any. Thank you, Mr. Reimer.
Mr. Chair, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for your time this morning. That certainly concludes our presentation.
Good. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for all staff for all your great contributions to this budget, and the mayor's office for proposing this budget. It gives us a lot to work with over the next couple of months. So thank you very much for your detailed presentation. I'm going to allow just a few minutes of transition for our friends in regulatory services, and we'll begin the next hearing as soon as they're available.
Hey, One chair. Don't look up.
Ready now? Well, welcome back to those viewers on the TV. Now I have an opportunity to hear from our Regulatory Services Department on their proposed budget from the Mayor's recommended budget. Thank you in advance for your cooperation and leading this robust conversation. Mr. Schuckman, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Noah Schuckman, Interim Director of Regulatory Services. I'm joined today by Kelly Jones, our Deputy Director for Community Administration and Community Engagement, Clara Schmidt-Gonzalez, our Deputy Director for Traffic Control, Caroline Harefield entering the room, our Deputy Director for Minneapolis Animal Care and Control, Erica Prosser, Project Coordinator, and Mike Rumpy is behind me, Housing Inspections Deputy Director, and then also joined by my predecessor, Nuria Rivera-Vandermeide, the Deputy City Coordinator. Thank you to all of them and our staff for their work on this and their work throughout the year. I'm going to give you a quick summary of the business lines that we have in regulatory services and then talk through the enhancements in the Mayor's recommended budget. On this, as you'll see on this slide, is our department org chart. The department's mission is listed there: strengthening communities by partnering with residents, neighborhoods, and businesses to make the city safer, healthier, and more inviting for all. You'll note here that the department is 6 divisions, 4 field divisions, and 2 administrative divisions, totaling 156 FTE. We've had a fair amount of transition over the last few months. We've had 2 key retirements, Nuria moving over to be Deputy City Coordinator, my role as Interim Director, but by and large, the department has not changed structurally. We did a reorganization within several of our divisions this summer, but that does not change the overall structure of the department. The field divisions are located in 4 separate locations: Fire Station 21 and Hamilton School for housing inspections. Minneapolis Animal Care and Control is at their facility, and Traffic Control is located out of the Curry Maintenance Facility. The department is funded through both the general fund and a non-general fund, which we refer to generally as the revolving fund. Approximately 25% of the department is funded from that revolving fund. Enhancements that we'll talk through shortly are in 3 divisions: housing inspections, traffic control, and administration and community engagement. To talk through our divisions independently, Minneapolis Animal Care and Control has a dual focus, both public safety and shelter care. The recent reorganization that I referenced reflects that. We've moved to having 2 field supervisors and an administrative supervisor, and then we're working towards hiring a shelter supervisor / veterinarian. There are no enhancements for this division funded in the Mayor's recommended budget. I will call your attention to our chart slide, and specifically I wanted to call out a highlight on the bottom chart on the left, which is the continued reduction in euthanasia that we've seen at Minneapolis Animal Care and Control. I mentioned, I would like to just highlight that this is in part due to the department's continued focus on partnerships. In Minneapolis Animal Care and Control, we've worked hard to establish relationships with rescue groups, and those rescue groups have played a vital role in moving animals out of the shelter and lowering the numbers of euthanasia.
Mr. Schuckman, Councilmember Goodman, and then Council President Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I'm wondering if just after this meeting we could get a little additional data in kind of 3 areas. One would be the total number of animals in and out of the facility rescue organizations, humane societies can provide total number of animals served. So I don't have a sense of what the percentages are if I don't know what the total is. I'm also interested in just hearing a little bit later about the bully breed adoption initiative and how many of these dogs that were adopted were bully breeds, and also how many of them were the ones that failed the behavior test or had a past history of aggression. And then lastly, I would love to see this all kennel outcomes chart going back at least 6 years. I think we've done a lot in the city to move from a police function to a potential care and control function. I think the numbers will show that. I think that's an important story as we move forward with changes that are being proposed by staff at animal care and control. So I'm just interested. This is an area where statistics really matter because we're dealing with actual animals and the way people feel about them. And so at a later date, not tomorrow or anything like that, if you could just provide us a more fulsome look, especially as it pertains to activities in 2016 going forward and changes at animal control.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Goodman, I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Thanks.
Mr. Schuckman, on the chart under all kennel outcomes, when it says disposal, does that mean that we've been called because someone sees an animal in the street or something? Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, Council President Johnson, that's
really
correct.
Boy, that's a high number. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you'll see there on the chart, from 2013 to 2014, the euthanasia rate dropped approximately 1/3, and we are seeing another smaller decrease so far this year. Euthanasia at the shelter includes euthanasia done at the owner's request because of dangerous behavior of an animal for untreatable medical conditions, and it also includes wildlife. And I would say so far in 2015, we have not euthanized any animal because there's not enough space in the shelter. I would also note that Councilmember Andrew Johnson is working with us on ordinance language changes that I think will take steps to hopefully further reduce that number.
Great. Thank you for that.
Moving on to traffic control, I would note that traffic control has two main focus areas: parking enforcement and intersection control. We are working on some innovative change at traffic control. This year, we reclassify traffic control agents to be titled code compliance specialist, and the goal of that is to move towards a larger role in doing code compliance work, including nuisance enforcement and cross-training with other divisions, which we hope to kick off this fall. There are two enhancements in the mayor's recommended budget for this division, and I will walk through those. The first of those is one-time money, which is $148,000 associated with a training pool of reserve part-time traffic control agents to deal with workload associated with added events and increased construction projects. This addition and this enhancement will make it easier for us to do our core work of intersection control and parking enforcement. Additionally, there's an ongoing enhancement in the mayor's recommended budget for $100,000, which is for an FTE to be shared with the Operations and Business Improvement Division and to work on data analysis. One of the ways that this position, we've used an intern for some of this so far, and one of the things that intern has done is look at equity issues in locations of citations, how enforcement is done, and helping us to provide important data to us and Public Works about where information on snow emergency rules and parking policies is not connecting with residents.
Mr. Schuckman, you had mentioned the increase, obviously, the traffic management at some big events this past year. How did you do that, accomplish those objectives with the part-time staff, without the part-time staff that you're adding?
Mr. Chair, committee members, I would say that in 2015, one of the ways we handled additional workload was by actually adding technology, iPads. And what we were able to do is give direct access to the staff to get 311 requests on their iPads and respond to them. Specifically, we created precinct areas for them to work in, and then they were given queues of requests. And what they were able to do is use the iPad to respond to those requests. Previously, this was done with paper every day, and it resulted in hundreds of pieces of paper going in and out of the traffic control's offices every day, which delayed service, delayed response, and made it more much more complicated. Now those requests are normally dispatched within 15 minutes, which has led to substantial decreases in response times and better customer service throughout the city. Without additional staff, we will see further reductions in our enforcement activity. When they go out to do a citation on a driveway that's blocked, which is a high priority given that it's an access issue, it takes away from writing tickets and doing intersection control.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move on to a chart here. I wanted to just note that there has been a drop, if you look on the top left chart, in ticket revenue, about $300,000 over the last few years. Much of that is associated with the new parking meters downtown that Public Works has implemented. I think that there has been an increase in the parking fund as they have seen more payment, but that has also meant that we've seen a decrease in the number of tickets written downtown.
Generally, I think that's a great point. You know, we're not managing this business to write tickets. It's to generate parking revenues and to avoid writing tickets. So seeing that drop is not a bad thing.
Mr. Chair, correct. And I would add also that we don't yet know what the effect of the new mobile phone app that you can pay from your phone sitting in a restaurant. We don't know what the effect will be, but I would assume, I think it's a safe assumption that it will lead to a likely further reduction in tickets.
Thank you.
Moving on to fire inspection services. Fire inspection services provides fire and life safety code inspections for high occupancy dwellings, which is buildings of 4 or more units, as well as commercial structures. The division enforces the Minnesota State Fire Code in coordination with the State Building Code and the Housing Maintenance Code, and reviews plans of highly complex fire and life safety systems, hazardous materials facilities, and certificates of occupancy. There are no enhancement requests included in the mayor's recommended budget associated with this division, but I will quickly call out on the top left chart, you see a steady increase in the number of buildings and the number of units that are subject to inspection by fire inspection services. And that roughly matches up with the number of permits issued and the permit fees collected. And that is because the city continues to build up and get more dense. And so we are expecting that to continue to increase. Our final field division is Housing Inspection Services, which manages the city's existing housing stock and all rental properties of 3 units or less. This division includes the Problem Properties Unit, which manages boarded and vacant buildings from their boarded and vacant status back through a restoration agreement process and then back into the housing stock. This does include demolitions where necessary, but the numbers of demolitions have dropped substantially over the last few years. Let's see here. We have, this is where our largest enhancement request is located, and that is for $550,000 for additional resources for staff. And that's 4 housing inspectors and 2 additional office support staff. We last year did not make a request for staff in this division. We did a study of what was needed, where resources were needed, and this request reflects that. Licensed units in the city have grown 57% since 2009, and they continue to grow along with conversions. This enhancement will allow us to implement the tier inspection program that we've talked about, and the additional staff will allow for better quality and frequency of inspections around the city. Rental properties are concentrated in the city's most diverse communities, particularly the tier 2 and 3 properties. And this enhancement will allow more equitable and thorough services in those areas and ensure that rental properties are safe and well maintained and provide better coverage throughout the city.
Mr. Schuckman, Council President Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Schuckman, when will we see a report or I suppose after the budget, after we pass this, but when will we expect to see how these resources will be implemented to deal with those tier 2 and tier 3 properties?
Mr. Chair, Council President Johnson, I'm not sure that I can give you a specific date, but I'd be happy to speak with Mr. Rumpy and come back to you on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. In the next year, we're looking at formalizing pathways for advancement in the department, including staff development and clear avenues for growth. And this enhancement actually is a crucial part of that. As we look for ways to incentivize new staff and help them to stay here and grow as leaders and future leaders at the city, one of the things that our department has struggled with is finding ways for people to move up and around in the department. And the entry-level vacancies created by this enhancement will help to create a promotional route for staff in our other divisions. The places where we see that the most is animal care and control, and then our most diverse division in terms of staffing is traffic control, and there has been movement through there as well. And so the department will continue to use these opportunities to make sure that we are reflecting the community that we serve, and it builds capacity throughout the department. On this bottom left chart, I'll just quickly call your attention to the tier percentages that we're seeing citywide. As you see, the vast majority of rental properties fall into tier 1, about 86%. Another 11.5% fall into tier 2, and a very small number, almost 2%, fall into tier 3. And this, to me, reflects our ongoing effort to focus resources where they're most needed. We're spending the most time on those tier 3 and tier 2 properties. The vast majority of the properties in the city are in compliance or very close to it, and landlords are very responsive to the requests that we make. The first of our two administrative divisions, administration and community engagement, is focused on community engagement. It manages the department's data entry and data quality control, as well as employee engagement and professional development. This is a division that interacts with all the rest of the divisions and ensures that we're looking at the department's operations through an equity lens, a youth lens, a senior lens, and it includes the homeowner navigator program, which I'll expand on in a minute. Our last enhancement is in this division, and that is a $100,000 enhancement for Homeline. This is a very successful partnership that Regulatory Services has had. Homeline provides needed support for our growing population of renters. Homeline doesn't directly represent renters, but it helps them to identify resources. The city doesn't mediate between landlords and renters, but Regulatory Services has recognized and valued the need for this partner as a stakeholder as they work to help bridge some of that gap. Homeline ends up as a third-party independent resource and helps tenants to identify their rights and responsibilities as tenants.
Council Vice President Glidden.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to say I really strongly support this enhancement, and thanks for talking about it. I think, too, that Reg Services has done a good job of evaluating how these services are providing and kind of really getting a good handle on that. So I do think, too, what I've heard in the community is one of the greatest needs is assistance through staffing that would be able to speak in a language other than English, and that continues to be a challenge, and just the ability to then properly work through your caseload and all of that is hampered if they don't have enough staff to really handle the number of callers who need a direct call from someone who speaks in a language other than English. So thanks.
Yeah, I would echo that remark. I thought it's a tremendous investment and with a high return on that investment because it reaches people across the city without distinction about income levels. So they're doing an outstanding job of representation, but I think we need to continue to support that work. So thank you for the mayor for putting that in the recommended budget this year. I know it will be a popular and supported effort.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will refer back to the homeowner navigation program. Excuse me. I wanted to just call attention to that specifically. We see about 20 cases referred from our housing inspection staff per quarter, and there was an addition in the 2015 budget of additional staff to meet the demand there. The average length of an outstanding issue that this staff is dealing with is almost 4 years. That there's been an ongoing problem at a property that they're now stepping in to help resolve. And what we're seeing is that as the population ages and as we work to keep seniors in their homes, that we're seeing a greater need here. And we expect that to increase as the populace continues to age. Numbers to date have stayed steady with what we've seen in 2013 and 14. Combined in 2013 and 2014, we saw 101 cases, and so far through the third quarter of 2015, we've seen 52 to date. Our final division is Operations and Business Improvement. The division handles, among other things, data analysis for the department, manages the administrative hearing process for the department and a few other parts of the city, and provides department-wide support for business planning, performance management, organizational development, budget, technology, and as a liaison to other city departments and stakeholders. There are no specific enhancement requests associated with this department, although, as I mentioned earlier, it does share an enhancement request with traffic control for a data analyst. That role and that team, I would highlight the upper right corner of this slide is a visual from one of the ward profiles. In 2015, the data analysis team created ward and neighborhood profiles for all 13 wards and all neighborhoods in the city. Those will be updated in 2016 and can be found on the Regulatory Services website under Data and Reports. They include rental license profiles, land use profiles, maps, and demographics. And I would just say that they, I think, would likely be a helpful resource for you at neighborhood meetings or community meetings. And they provide the department a great opportunity to take a deeper dive into equity issues associated with where we're doing enforcement. As I mentioned, the traffic control example earlier. As we move toward One Minneapolis, we'll need to continue to develop people with these data skills to do this specific research and find more information. And finally, our CARS requests. I will give just a quick summary of those. There are 5 that encompass $775,000. 4 of them, electronic chalking software, citation writer hardware, and interface to the land management system. License plate recognition upgrade, state traffic citation data solution are associated with traffic control. Mobile devices required for the land management system is for our inspection staff. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions on those, but I know you've been here for a while, and so I'll stand for any questions on the entirety of our proposal. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Schuckman, and thank you to the department for all the great work that they're doing in our city. Are there any questions or comments? I think you've run up against lunchtime, so well done. You should get bonus points for being ahead of schedule. So thank you very much for that hearing, and seeing no questions or further comments, we're going to close this, and thank you very much for all attending and for the robust conversation of this morning. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great job.